Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. It's Dr. Shani here. Today I want to uplift a conversation on group dynamics. If you're new to this channel, welcome. I'm Dr. Shani Collins Woods, Associate Professor of Social Work. And on this channel, I talk about all things related to self-care, success, faith, and just personal growth and development. I also have started to incorporate more about sorority life. I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. But today's talk is just going to center on group dynamics. For many years, I have worked in various groups, including just working on teams as a high school student, been in sorority as a college student, growing up in church, being a part of church culture where you are working with group dynamics, creating subgroups within church, organizing for church programs, organizing for community programs. As a professor, I've worked with diverse groups, practice groups, research groups, student groups. I love talking about group dynamics. I understand group dynamics quite well. Initially, I was going to focus this talk on sorority life and sorority conflict, but I thought to expand it because as we are all professionals working, and growing, striving to become successful, we will all have to work with various groups. And sometimes working in groups can be quite fun, quite engaging, quite entertaining, quite inspiring, quite uplifting, but also there is the other part of working with groups where if the dynamics of that group are not managed well, you can feel a sense of chaos if the group is, going haywire, that there's no structure, that it's disorganized, that there is chaos, that there's frustration, that microaggressions are occurring, that leaders are passive aggressive. And so all of these things, both positive and negative, can occur across a variety of different groups. So as we talk about this today, I want you to think about groups you are involved in. Again, I mentioned a variety of groups that I have been involved in. And for the most part, I've had experiences both positive and some experiences that I would deem to be negative, or experiences that could have been more constructive or productive had there been different leadership or different dynamics. Let's get into some of the reasons why groups are not as strong as they could be, or some of the ways that we can help to better facilitate groups if we are leading groups. So get your group in mind and let's talk about it. It is important for us to understand the various reasons why conflict can occur within groups. I remember leading a group at a behavioral health center for individuals who were in mental health distress. And for many months, my colleagues could not get some of the patients to come to the group. And, I started to assess, like, what's going on? Why is it that no one is coming to the group? They're like, we just can't get people to come to the groups, right? We can't get people to engage. It's a big part of their treatment plan. It's a part of their therapeutic process. We can't get people to engage. Well, when I showed up, you had about a group, those a mid-sized group. By the time I left that organization for a new position, that room was packed. And so a big part of leading groups and facilitating groups is really being able to connect with people, to understand people, to understand that everyone wants to be seen and to feel like their voice matters and to feel heard. But if you can see people in that group and make that connection, whether it's just remembering their name or calling upon them or redirecting from a person who is trying to dominate the conversation, then you will have more individuals buy in. And why is that? They feel seen. They feel like they are heard. And when you're dealing with individuals who are in mental health crisis, oftentimes they don't feel seen and they do not feel heard. And so I was very impressed with myself and very, happy that, the skills and tools that I've learned over the years really were able to apply to that particular situation. We're thinking about groups. Of course, you are going to be working with diverse individuals. Everyone is not like Shani. And guess what? That is great because I don't want everyone to be like me. And I don't want to be like everyone else. We are all created as unique individuals. And that thing that makes you unique is wonderful. The thing that makes me unique, or those things are wonderful and things to be celebrated. And sometimes when we work with groups, there is a thought process or a mindset that everyone needs to think the same. We all need to work the same. We all need to do things the same way for groups to flow well. I don't think this is the right approach. I believe in a strengths based approach. And that means that you identify those members of that group. So let's say you are working in a group of 6 people. So the leader might be charged with the responsibility of identifying each person's strength or their strengths, because we all have multiple strengths, and tapping into those strengths that they possess as a leader. Just because you are not the person leading that group, it doesn't mean that you don't have strengths. No, everyone brings something to the table. And a good leader, a strong leader, will recognize that very quickly and try to tap into those strengths, tap into that person's unique qualities, their unique characteristics, their unique personality, and bring those dynamics into play when you are trying to execute a particular task. Some of the issues that also can occur when we think about group dynamics center around power struggles. Okay, and this looks like who's going to plan an activity, who's going to lead the activity, who's going to get the credit for an activity. And this kind of gets into our egos, right? Who's going to get the credit, who's going to lead, who's going to plan. And then again, this goes back into individuals wanting to be seen, wanting to be heard, wanting their voice to matter, and also just to get the credit for the hard work that they are doing. Some of the ways that we can mitigate, again, this power struggle, I think, which occurs, it definitely occurs in education. It's always a power struggle in spaces that I have been familiar with, like in the research community, practice community, education community, sorority community. There's always going to be some type of power struggle. A lot of this can be mitigated by the leader or the leaders who are basically leading the groups, okay, or providing direction to the group, okay, because sometimes this conflict can start from the head and it can trickle down into the group dynamics. But if that leader is clear about their expectations, they set the tone for how the communication will flow, how who's going to do what in what role, that helps to mitigate a lot of conflict. And especially when it comes to roles where individuals are working in subgroups, sometimes conflict can occur even among the subgroup of a bigger group because there's a power struggle there. Well, we're in this subgroup that's a part of this larger group, but who's going to lead it? And so sometimes this just comes strictly down to making sure that roles are clear. You stay in this role and I'll stay in this role, and that can help mitigate a lot of the conflict. And so everyone comes together with their particular work, with their role, or their task being completed, and there you go, the project is done in the subgroup, and we come back to meet in the larger group and have that discussion. But oftentimes we know that doesn't occur. So it's important when you're working in different spaces and places that you pick or appoint leaders who really have leader skills in managing group conflict, because that helps the task to become executed well, and it helps the flow of meetings. Another thing to consider when we think about group dynamics is gossip. Who said what and to whom? Who was hurt by this gossip? Who is the target of this gossip, this malicious slander? Why does it occur? It does destroy group dynamics. If you've heard something negative, sometimes it can shape our perception of another person. If you heard, oh, this person is difficult to work with, or he's difficult to work with, or they never do their job and never come in on time, and you haven't had that experience with that person, if you listen too closely to that, it will shape your perception of that person. And sometimes that does shape how leaders interact with others who are a part of a group. People can already go before you and set the tone or tell others false things about you, and then others are interacting with you in that way based on someone else's narrative or their lie. And so we who are leaders and are striving to be great leaders have to make sure we are steering away from gossip and from things that will basically destroy a person's character or their reputation without us knowing them. Now, if they do that on their own, if I'm doing something on my own, then that's on me. And if that person is doing it on their own, then that's on them. But let's be willing to give everyone a fair chance when we are working in group to judge people as they come to you. I made this statement in a meeting some months ago. I take people as they come to me, and I try to treat everyone fairly. And Tim will tell you that he's like, you're always, even when it comes down to cookies, 6 and 6, 3 and 3. And I'm really about trying to be fair with people because I know what it feels like treated unfairly. So I try to advocate for fairness and equality when I'm working with people. And so I try to take people as they come to me. And if you show me something different or communicate something different to me with your actions and your behavior, then I will move accordingly. Having that gossip in the air about other people can disrupt group dynamics. So if you have a gossiper in the group, tell them, hey, this is not the place for that type of communication. We want to keep it positive. We want to keep it unified. We want to keep things moving to execute this particular task or project. Because ultimately, if you are that person in that success role or in that leadership role, you also have to deal with individuals bringing negativity to the group dynamic. So gossip can be a part of infiltrating positive group dynamics. Cliques and exclusion. We've all experienced this when certain people walk in the room, they already have a clique formed, or their whole goal is to exclude other people from having a voice. How do we mitigate that? Again, I put a lot of responsibility back on the leadership or the facilitators of groups, okay? This can occur oftentimes in the classroom. I work in a classroom environment. I teach in the classroom. And sometimes you will have a group who they like to sit together every time, this class to the next class to the next class to the next class. They are always together and they have a tendency to overtake things. But on the outside in other spaces, I have seen this play out. And so what I do to mitigate that, I call on every single person in the room, not just those of you who think, you're the popular ones or the teacher's favorite. That doesn't work for me. And so you can also mitigate this if you are leading a group or if you are involved in a group by encouraging that leader to make sure that they are calling on everyone, that they are striving to hear everyone's voice, that no particular 2 or 3 people are a clique or excluding other people, and that everyone's voice is heard and that their opinions are heard in the group. I keep pointing back to leadership. And so whether it's, your supervisor, your church member, whoever it is, whoever you want to put as that leader, and it might be you, maybe you're facilitating, maybe you are leading. A lot of these dynamics have to be mitigated by that leader. So if you see it taking place in a group that you are leading, you need to nip it in the bud, okay? Because it will infiltrate everything else. And there are many people who work on diverse groups. And oftentimes those who are in those little cliques and stuff, they only want to do what they want to do. And eventually those little cliques, they're going to come to undermine you as the leader, right? Because that's what they do. A lot of times the goal is to undermine, right? They're trying to undermine the dynamics of whatever group setting you have, whether it's a classroom, church environment, sorority event, work environment. They seek to undermine the group dynamics, right? Because you can divide, you can conquer. And so that next target is going to be who? You as the leader of that group or the facilitator. So you have to nip those dynamics in the bud. And how I do that in the classroom, I call on everyone. I cannot tell adults really where to sit, but I will make subgroups and randomly assign them. And I'll do that over and over again so that they can become familiar with working with someone who is not in their little clique, right? And I've seen this take place when it comes to student organizations and also in sororities, where it's the same people over and over and over again, and their voices are the loudest. They want to be heard, they want to be seen, and if they aren't running the show, then it's a problem. Well, that's not helpful to the bigger objectives or the bigger mission of whatever goal it is you are trying to accomplish. So if you are facilitating a group, make sure you are striving for fairness and equity in your group. And when you see those dynamics coming to play, right, make sure you are trying to your best infiltrate those little subgroups, those little subclicks, and tell people that they are bringing harm to other people, or there's a perception of harm, and we don't want that if we're really talking about the mission. Cliques often divide the team, and often cliques will come for the leader or the facilitator of the group. Another thing that can disrupt group dynamics is value conflicts. What are your core values? If you are a person who has a core value of fairness, like I try to strive for, okay, I try to strive to be fair, okay, just fair. And like, I don't want to treat anyone differently because of this or that. I'm not going to say anything to one student that is bringing harm to a student. I'm not going to say this to this person that's going to bring harm to them. I strive for fairness and equality when I'm working in group dynamics because I believe that is important. It's a core value for me. Well, sometimes we have different core values, right? And so when you may be working with a colleague or business partner, sorority member, church member, whoever, you all may be a part of this larger organization or this larger structure, but do your core values align? And I'm not just talking about your personal values. You may personally believe in this or personally believe in that, but like at the core of who you are, is fairness something that you truly believe in, right? Doing no harm to people. Are those like a part of your core values that you believe in? And oftentimes those things play out in group dynamics. And if people fundamentally don't believe in some things, just like about, just simple principles about, what's fair or what's unfair, or yeah, stealing probably is not the right thing to do. It's not the right thing to do. They may say, well, I can take a little money off the top. Then you understand that you all may have a conflict with your core values of what you believe in. And in that case, you're always going to have conflict with that person. It doesn't matter what you do or what group it is. You can switch the name of the group and put a new task in front of that group. If a person's core values are really not aligned with things that are positive, then you're always going to run into some conflict. And so this occurs in various groups because everyone has a different set of principles that they live their life by. Some people don't even have a principled life. They just like, whatever go, whatever comes, then I'm just going to respond to that. However it flows, that's just how I respond. And so if you are not a person who has that perspective on life, if you strive to do right by people, if you strive for fairness, equality, if you understand, hey, I'm not a perfect person. I ain't no perfect person at all. I will make mistakes, but I'm willing to own my mistakes and really to, be a team player, to take one for the team, or really own up to some of the things that may not be perfect about me, then, you can move forward with a person in a group like that. But if you're dealing with individuals whose core values are selfishness, meaning it has to be about them, it's never about anyone else, then you're always going to disagree if your core value is not selfishness, right? We're selfish sometimes, but if that's not who you are, that's just not who you are. If you're dealing with individuals whose core values are to be, cutthroat, or to cut the legs from under a person, or to stifle people's growth, if that's not who you are in your core value, then you will never be at peace or be able to really work positively with a person who has those core values. So those are things to keep in mind when you are working in group dynamics. A lot of it comes down to just a simple difference in our core values, the way we see things, the way I see this team being led my leadership style differs from your leadership style. I don't believe that you should go into the meeting and scream at everybody and expect them to do um, just what you want them to do. Your value may be like, I want to hear people. I want to hear their perspective. Even if it's negative feedback, I'm interested in hearing it. So those are things that can also lead to conflict, whether it's sorority, church, education, business, any profession. When your core values are different, you're going to have that conflict. And unless someone is willing to change, this person who has these values that are askew, or you perceive them to be askew from the bigger positive mission of whatever task you're working toward, or whatever the company mission is, then you're always going to have that level of conflict. And usually when there's a high level of conflict around like core values and the mission of what you are there for, that person who's askew is usually terminated at some point. At some point, it may take 4 to 5 years, or they leave, and things of that nature. I've seen that happen over and over again, or they get caught up in litigation because at the core of who they are, their values were not aligned with the mission of whatever organization or structure that you all were involved in. Another thing that leads to conflict in group dynamics is accountability or the lack thereof. For example, sometimes in group dynamics, only certain people are held accountable. I've seen this play out many, 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 many times before. Someone can come in the room, and this kind of goes back into that notion of cliques and exclusion. Someone can come into the meeting and they're always 40 minutes late every time. They're always late to the meeting. Let's say the meeting was going on and you guys were doing the hard work discussing. There were 15 people there, and the last two who made up the group, they always come in late. Well, because the leader or the facilitator is friends with those last two, this behavior goes on and on and on and on and on. And the leader doesn't say anything. Why? Because behind the scenes, they're friends. And so sometimes group dynamics are hijacked because the leader, and I keep pointing back to the leader or the facilitator does not spread the accountability evenly. It's different strokes for different folks. Some people, there's a punishment or a reprimand for or a sanction for their behavior. In other people, it's just overlooked, it's dismissed. What are you talking about? Could it be this? Could it be that? Oh, perhaps, or this happened, or this happened. There's a lot of excuse made. What happens when that occurs? Well, those other 15 people are very resentful. And they're like, well, I ain't doing nothing else in this group because these people over here, they're just doing exactly what they want to do, and you do not even hold them accountable. These group dynamics can play out in church. I've seen it played out in church where pastors and leaders play favorites. Again, it goes back into that clique. They play favorites. These people over here can do whatever with the church's money, and you ask for funds to fund your little project. Nope, all this type of stuff. I've seen it play out in sorority culture. So again, that goes back to the cliques, the exclusion, who gets rewarded, and even goes back into who gets praised or acknowledged for their work. Those 15 could be the most hardworking people in a business setting. They show up, they do what they're supposed to do. Yes, they have some personal life things going on, but they still show up. They're doing what needs to be done to execute the tasks that have been assigned to them. And no one ever says thank you. The leadership never says thank you. The leadership never says, well done. We appreciate you. A thank you can go very far. I'm telling you, I'm married. Thank yous go far in life. You are in your marriage or any type of group, and always tell people thank you. Always be gracious, because that shows appreciation. That shows that you value other people. And to the same extent, to the contrary, these 2 people or 4 people always coming in late, never engaged in the project, always complaining, longer lunch breaks, whatever it is. Oh my gosh, when they do one thing, oh my gosh, did you see this dynamic work of this person? And the rest of the 15 are over here like, be for real. Now, you know those people don't do absolutely anything all day at work. These are things that point back to poor leadership. When leaders don't acknowledge everyone on the team fairly, and you may say, well, I gotta acknowledge everybody. Why not? Why not? It doesn't harm you. Appreciate yous go a long way when you are working in group dynamic. They go a long way when you are working with other people and not just sending an email or not just sending a text. And those things are helpful too. But sometimes it's picking up the phone. Sometimes it's leaving a note. Sometimes it's just sitting that person down and just saying, I want to tell you thank you. And if you are a leader who's played favorites, or if you are working on not playing favorites because some of your favorites are in the room, and there's nothing wrong with being fond of people and having friendships because we are people, we connect. Strive to be fair, strive to be equitable, and I think that will help you as you navigate your group dynamics. And keep in mind, you're in this leadership role for a reason, not to abuse that position, but to empower people to be the best leaders they can be, right? A leader should empower other people to feel better about themselves and to be the best leader they can be, right? Because just because those people who you are leading or facilitating are not at the table or at that seat that you sit in, it doesn't mean they aren't leaders. Yeah, they're all leaders as well. And so again, that goes back into tapping into their unique leadership style, their strengths. What do they bring to the table? And acknowledging that and not playing favorite. Lastly, the thing I want to talk about as it relates to conflict in groups is unhealed trauma. Sometimes individuals you work with, whether that's in business, leadership, church, sorority, family dynamics, sometimes people just need to go to therapy. And sometimes individuals cannot afford therapy. Other times individuals are unwilling to deal with their unresolved trauma. I see this show up all the time in the workspace. I see this show up all the time in the classroom. Individuals have a lot of unresolved issues, right? Or their home dynamics are poor. A person can come to the office environment every single day. They're mad, they're frustrated. We were recently in Montgomery, Alabama, and it was the morning. We were getting breakfast, preparing to leave to come back to Tennessee. And we were on the elevator with this woman. And boy, did she have a scowl on her face. She was just like, and I was thinking to myself, I said, I wonder what happened? What made her so mad this morning? Because I'm kind of a morning person. Okay, I'm up bubbly a little bit. And I know everyone may not be like me, but I am a morning person. I can be very quiet in my work environment, but it doesn't mean that I'm frustrated or sad or angry. I'm not. I can be very quiet. But I was thinking to myself, wow, I'll have bad days and I can understand that. But I hope that's not her disposition every single morning when she's going out to lead teams, because she looked like she was organizing a team in the lobby of the hotel. I said, who would want to deal with her? She's like hell on wheels, all right? No one wants to deal with that every day. So sometimes we need to get to the root of what's going on within ourselves. If you're having home issues, you and your home issues are not everyone else's responsibility. And I know that may sound harsh, but it's really true. Same thing goes the other way. Their home issues are not your responsibility. Yes, we care. Yes, we feel empathy. Yes, we love. Yes, we will support. But it is up to us as individuals, as leaders, to really deal with any levels of unresolved trauma. And it's also important for us to not bring that into every space that we go into. And so that's why therapeutic processes are important. That's why self-care is important. Walking, talking, eating well, to be positive in life, because life is stressful for us. As Langston Hughes said, life ain't been no crystal stair, okay? No one has had a 100% perfect life. But when we are leading, facilitating groups, engaging with others, and trying to be impactful, it is not someone else's responsibility to deal with the things that you yourself refuse to or have not dealt with. Having a bad day, it's no one else's responsibility to deal with me having a bad day. I need to take a moment, take 5 minutes, take 10 minutes, take 30 minutes, or even take a day off to deal with what I have going on. And the same thing goes for you and for the people that you are entrusted to lead or that you are working with. Let's think about leadership from the perspective of how we are showing up, okay? How you show up for yourself. How are you leading in your home? How are you just leading in your personal life, all right? Because however you are showing up for yourself, whether that's positive or negative, you're also going to bring that energy into whatever space you are designated to lead. So show up for yourself in a positive, healthy way. Be positive with yourself. You can't always beat yourself up and always be negative with yourself. That's not productive at all. Because guess what? When you bring that energy to yourself, how are you going to speak positively to a team? You're not. All you're going to say is negative, 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 negative. If you never speak positive about yourself or think positively about yourself, you don't need to lead teams because your perception is negative. And so sometimes that unresolved trauma means that you have to deal with a negative self-perception or a negative self-concept before you can help anyone else. And so it means getting your stuff together, all right? And so we all have to do that. And it means having a level of self-awareness and being aware of the things that we all need to work on as individuals and as leaders and emerging leaders. Because if we aren't good for ourselves, how are we going to lead somebody else, right? Can't tell nobody else what to do. And you coming in every day with all this extra drama and energy that you're bringing because people feel that. So be positive with yourself. Also, think about how you want to be treated. And I know that sounds very simple. It may sound old-fashioned, but again, how do you want to be treated? How do you want to be spoken to? How do you want to be involved in projects with others? How would you want that to look like? How do you want that to feel? Should it feel positive? Or should it feel negative and filled with conflict? No one wants that conflict, okay? Conflicts are going to occur anyway when you're doing hard things, right? Life is hard. Making business deals, that's hard. Teaching students, it can be hard. Doing the work of a sorority, helping the community, doing the work of church leadership, all of that is hard. But we can make our group dynamics better if we are striving to empower people, if we're having a high level of self-awareness, how we are showing up with people. Are you expecting your group to show up on time and you don't even show up on time? Are you expecting that group to come prepared and you don't know what's going on? Oh, I didn't know what was going on today. I don't know what's going on in this meeting. That's not the best version of you. So we have to, again, have this level of self-awareness of our limitations so that we can improve and we can grow. And so that we can, again, spark that inspiration in other people to make them the best leaders. And so we have to think about things from the whole picture. How are we being more inclusive versus exclusive? It's just us in this clique. We don't invite others in. Well, that's not helpful. Well, what if you have a secret millionaire on your team and you need funding, but you've excluded that person, right? Or what if you have a secret quiet neuroscientist on the team and you need an answer to an equation? So we have to be mindful of keeping an open mind when we deal with all people and never judge a book by its cover because you don't know who you're sitting next to. You don't know, and I don't know often, who I'm in the room with. And so, again, saying thank you, being nice, being open, being friendly, it goes a long way, and not from a fake perspective because you're trying to get some advantage, but just because it's who you are. We have to also be mindful of our core values and what we're bringing to these different group dynamics. Your core values can't be all negative, 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 dark, 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 dark. What are your core values? Is there light? Is there positivity? Why do plants grow and thrive in the light, in the brightness, right? They need light. They need positive energy to survive and thrive. So do the members of your team. They want to hear positive things, right? No one wants to hear, you did this wrong all the time. You're never doing this right. No one wants to hear that. Not in marriage, not at your church, right? It's nothing worse than your pastor sitting up there fussing at you for a whole 90 minutes. And I've been through plenty of sermons like that in my life where, wow, we just are the worst Christians, right? What are we doing positive, right? No kid wants to hear their parent fuss at them excessively. You have to mix that with pot. You have to mix it like we do in social work, the sandwich. Start off with a positive thing, positive reinforcement, and then layer that kind of critical or constructive feedback in there, and end that sandwich with something positive. And guess what? Your goal as a leader is to build people up, not to tear them down. And so we also have to think about, again, holding ourselves accountable. Holding yourself accountable. And think about ways to mitigate those power struggles that can occur with who's going to do this, who's going to take this responsibility, by clearly identifying roles and clearly stepping up to the plate, even though it's hard, saying no to our friends sometimes, even though it's hard, and being that leader who is modeling the behavior that you expect of your group dynamics. Wish you productivity and enjoyment and much fulfillment as you carry out the tasks and the missions of your particular group assignment. Thank you for watching.